Hi everyone, Jason Frugé here. Welcome to another episode of Frugé-ology. In this mini-series, we talk about my three favorite things, whiskey, barbecue, and cigars, and I compare them to my other favorite thing, information security. Today's episode is a special 4th of July edition, and I'm going to talk to you about how to barbecue a brisket and make it hot and fast. This is a break from tradition. This is an 18.5 pound brisket. Normally, if you did this slow and low, this would take 90 minutes per pound. We don't have time for that. We got family coming. We're gonna make this thing in about 7 hours, and we're gonna sacrifice no flavor at all. I'm gonna teach you how to do that. This is gonna be great. So the first step is to prepare the meat. I've already started to trim some of this harder fat you can see here. I'm gonna go ahead and just get rid of all of this fat, but I'm not gonna trim it like I'm doing a competition cut. I'm gonna leave a little bit of fat. Here's what I guess I wanna say regarding the new way I'm gonna cook this. As an effective executive, you really have to be willing to learn new things all the time. And in this case, by cooking this hot and fast and getting this done in 7 hours, I'll be cutting my time in half or more and losing no quality. And as an effective strategic executive, you have to be willing to learn new ways to do things all the time to make sure your organization is always adapting. Now I'm gonna flip this over. I'm gonna leave this fat, I don't mind that so much. I've got some harder fat, here's the fat cap. I'm gonna cut most of this down. I don't like to have a lot of fat on my brisket because I end up, I want a good even smoke flavor throughout the brisket. And I want to make sure that the rub I put on there gets eaten. If you serve somebody a good, big fat piece of brisket, they're gonna cut all that fat off of there and just throw it in the trash, and there goes all that flavor of all that rub that you put into that brisket. This is called a packer's cut, which is a whole brisket. This flat part here, this is the flat, and this point is the point. The point is what you make the burn ends out of, and the flat is what you make sandwiches out of. I'm gonna cook this in one piece, but when I'm done, I'm actually gonna separate the point and the flat. And if you look on this piece of meat, right here, this piece of fat, I'm gonna cut, right? So remember this later in the video, I'm gonna cut about right here, and I'm just gonna pull the flat off of the point. And so this whole section is gonna come off as a flat, and this piece here I'm gonna set aside and make burn ends with it. All right, so my next step is to go ahead and put actually I'm gonna inject it first. This is a break from tradition here. Because I'm doing it hot and fast, I wanna get a lot of moisture into the meat. So I've prepared a habanero salt and water mix. I'm gonna use this meat injector, big needle, and I'm gonna start injecting it. So I'm gonna draw that up into the needle here. So I got a lot here. This might shoot all over the place as I inject it, but I wanna get a lot of moisture in there, and that habanero flavor is really gonna help keep this nice and moist because I'm gonna cook it at high temperatures. Now, as you can see, I'm injecting all over the place. I'm going about every inch. I'm putting just a little bit of that habanero salt and water mix in there. So just about every inch. This takes a little bit of time. I've already run out. Draw some more up in here. And just keep going. The next step is you want to make a nice adhesive. So I use a mustard base. Now I've already taken this mustard, and I just start with a plain French's mustard. I've already added some hot sauce, as you can see here. And then the next thing I do is I take a shot of whiskey, and I just add that right into there. Now I'm gonna mix that up, and I wanna make sure that tastes good. If you don't like the taste of mustard, don't worry. This all defrosts, or not defrosts, it all evaporates, so you won't taste that in the final product. So the mustard goes away, but that hot sauce and that whiskey flavor will still be in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and taste this to make sure that mustard's how I like it. That's pretty good. Actually, I think it needs a little more whiskey. Get it just the way I like it. Now that's how I like my mustard to taste. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put that mustard on there. And I just get a nice coating on there. I'm gonna go ahead and rub it in with my hand there. This is gonna make sure that rub, all the spices that I put on there, stays in place throughout the cook. So I rub that real good. The next step is to add your spices. Now, because I'm making a Texas style barbecue, I've made this rub. It's about equal portions of salt and pepper. A lot of people in Texas say just leave it at just the salt and pepper. Others add garlic powder, so it's salt, pepper, garlic powder. I've also added a little celery seed to my rub. So when you put your rub on, you want to put it on real heavy. Like you want to get a lot of good coverage on there. Don't be afraid to just really cover it up. Flip this over and do the other side as well. Well, let's take this outside and put it on the smoker. Hi everyone, welcome back. It's been about 3.5 hours now. I will tell you, checking this meat throughout the cook, I did have to raise the temperature up to 400 degrees ultimately to get the right texture of the meat. But in 3.5 hours, it looks very good. So here's what I'm looking for. You bring it in closer. You see there's a little bit of moisture forming at the top of the meat there. There's a nice texture throughout. This looks really good. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick this up. And again, only 3.5 hours in. I've gone ahead and lowered the temperature on the smoker down to 225 degrees. Now at this point, I'm gonna put it on this foil boat that I've made. I'm gonna close the smoker because I wanna preserve that heat. Okay, so I pulled the brisket. It was 205 degrees. That's about the exact right temperature. The probe just slided in like butter. So now I'm gonna go ahead and cut this foil. I'm gonna cut it away because what I wanna do is let the brisket just vent here into the open air. There's a pool of juices in there and I just wanna let them redistribute. So I'm gonna let this sit here on the counter and cook for at least the next hour. Okay, so now this brisket is completely unwrapped. This has been resting for at least an hour. As you can see how tender this is by me touching it. I'm gonna go ahead and cut towards the middle. Normally you would begin cutting here. I'm gonna go ahead and cut towards the middle just so we can get right to the best part so I can show you for demonstration. And I'm gonna take a nice little slice out of this just so we can see how this came out. And we're gonna take this piece. Oh, look at that. That looks delicious. As you can see, I'm gonna do the bend test. You can see how tender that is. Now I'm gonna do the tear test. This is a little thicker than normally you would want it to be, but I'm just gonna tear that apart. Okay, and I'm gonna taste this. Let's see how this tastes. This just looks delicious. So here we go. That's amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut the rest of that and we'll see how that goes. Oh, look at that. Family's already here. I'm gonna finish slicing this brisket up so we can have some delicious sandwiches. Hopefully, talking to you about how you can change your process and come up with the same great results has been helpful. I'll see you next time on Frugé-ology.